Welcome. Today I have Lynley Hips as my guest on 50 Shades of Meg. Lynley, welcome. How are you
Thank
doing
you for
today?
having me. I'm doing
You,
fantastic. Now
you're
that I get to talk
welcome.
to you, you know,
I know, it's been so long. Come
hey.
on. I would love, we're gonna dive into the world of copywriting and email marketing, which you are a subject matter expert on, and there's so many other things you are as well, but we'll talk about those two topics today.
Okay.
um, but just to start out, introduce yourself, let everybody know how you landed in the world of entrepreneurship, because it's a little bit similar to mine. We've got
Mhm.
some similarities.
Yeah,
So share with the audience just a little bit about
absolutely.
your backstory.
Yeah, I never expected to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't like the kid with the lemonade stand every weekend, nothing like that. I figured I would go to work in corporate America and I would spend 30 years doing that, and then I would retire. I mean, that's kind of what, our generation was sort of taught is the way you do things.
Right.
Um, but I spent about 15 years in corporate, and I loved my job. I love the people. I love the company. I met my husband there. All of my dearest friends were there. But I honestly, I turned 40 and I looked around and went, I can't do this for another 15 years. Like, I don't know what I want to do, but I need to do something different. I told my husband I needed to do something that scared the hell out of me. And as opposed to, going skydiving or bungee jumping, I chose to quit my nice full-time, good salary, secure job and start my business. I didn't actually start out as a copywriter, but I've always been a writer. Like every job I've ever had, I've always been writing. And I have a bachelor's degree in English and a master's in professional communication, but none of my jobs have ever had a writer title, like that was
Right.
never, it never felt like I was really a writer. And so I started out doing social media management and got about 2 months in and realized I hate this. It was the pressure to like constantly post content and come up with new and engaging stuff was just, that was not the way my brain worked. Um, and about
And I laugh because that's my job.
I
That's
know
what I do.
exactly. And your brain works that way. Like mine just it felt like so much pressure.
Yes.
Um and I ended up working with a friend of ours who needed some help. She had a copywriting business and she was like, "Hey, I know you're a good writer. Do you want to work on some ad copy?" And I did, and the ads did well. And so I pivoted to like copywriting full time about 6 months into my business.
Mhm.
So I did general copywriting, sales pages and some website copy and lots of ad copy and, email sequences and all of that. And I realized about a year or two, probably 2 years in, that I liked writing, but I missed the tech side of things. With with tech, I always, with writing, a lot of times I feel like it's never like I don't get that feeling of satisfaction because it still has to go to somebody to be like implemented, right? So like somebody's got to build the sales page or build the email sequence or build the ads, and so I
Right.
never got that sense of I did a good job. And I really do, I do better with that kind of thing. And so I realized that what I really liked was email marketing, but including the tech side of that. And a lot of times you find copywriting agencies and you find like email agencies that only do, the tech side of things. And you don't often
Right.
find, organizations or businesses that do kind of that focus specifically on email.
Right.
And so I figured that was probably a gap in the market that I could fill. And yeah, I started in about I think it was about 3 years ago that I started really focusing on email. And the thing I like about email, I focus mostly on my ideal clients are mostly Entrepreneurs who have been in the game a while, they have established programs, and they're the face of their business, right? And so I like writing those more personal kinds of emails from my client, as opposed
Right.
to emails that are more what I would consider like on the e-com side, right? That are more designed and like laid out and have, beautiful images and all of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I don't consider that a strength. Me and Canva don't get along very well. Although I'm enjoying it more and more.
No, I think you're pretty good at that. So you don't, I think you underestimate your skills.
Well, you're probably right, but that's not the type of email marketing I enjoy quite as much.
Right.
I really like that kind of story-based email marketing, and it resonates well with the way that I write, and also the way that my husband writes, because my husband is a writer by trade. He had a writer title in our company for 20 years. And right at the beginning of COVID, he was able to retire and come and work full time with me. So
I was going to say, we didn't mention that he's now in the business too.
Yes, he is. He is. So he sits back there and does a lot of the writing, which frees me up to do a lot of the tech. And it's a nice balance for us. But those that kind of email, the more personal story-based email, to me is it's a lot of fun, and it allows me to get to know my client better, because we're not talking about just the product. We're really talking about the attractive character,
Right.
And I feel like it's easier to build relationships, because that's really what email marketing is about. It's about building relationships. I quoted myself, there's probably something a little wrong with that, but I did a presentation at a client's retreat a few years ago, and I actually quoted myself saying, don't focus on building your email list, focus on building relationships, and your email list will grow as a part of that. But we get this idea in our head that our email list is this big, like, nebulous, group of faceless people, right? But if you can think about, like, I'm writing this email to Megan. I want Megan to know this information because I think this is important and it would benefit her. It's a lot less intimidating that way. And you don't feel like you're writing to 500 or 1,000, 60,000 people, right? Because that can get a little scary. One of my clients actually last month, or at the beginning of this month, told me that she said, guess how many emails you sent through between my different businesses. She's got 2 different businesses that we do her email marketing for. And I was like individual emails or like recipients? And she said, no, recipients. And I was like, I don't know. She said 276,000. And I was like, wow. oh my gosh.
It's like if you're going to go speak on stage and all of a sudden somebody tells you, oh, you know how I said it was going to be 200 people? There's actually 2,000 people.
Right. Just kidding.
What did I do?
Exactly. So, but if you can focus on that your ideal customer, the person that you really want to serve, and we talk about buyer personas and really giving this person a name and a face. My ICA, my buyer persona, her name is Sarah, and I write Sarah, and if I'm ever like I don't know what to write, I sit down and I think about what is she dealing with right now? She's likely a solopreneur. She doesn't have a lot of help. She's trying to wear all the hats. Where is she with her email marketing right now? Yeah, and typically she's struggling because she has so much to do, right? So
for anybody out there who doesn't know ICA, it's Ideal Client Avatar. Yes. And the simplest way I can put it is you give yourself a character or a person that compiles who your customer is, and you kind of paint a picture. Even at QVC, we had an ICA of this woman, and there was a whole deck on who she was, where she lived, how much she made, how many kids she had, what their names were, so that when we were teaching people to sell, it wasn't just into the abyss. You can latch into those feelings, those pain points, those solutions for her.
Right.
Or exactly. Yeah.
Or him, yes.
Yeah.
Or they. You know,
Yeah.
really, that is really the thing that I think a lot of business owners, new business owners, really miss the boat on when they first start out. And, you know, a lot of us, a lot of what we offer could be useful to just about anybody. But the
Mhm.
problem is when you sell to everybody, you sell to nobody.
Nobody.
And
Yeah.
so really, you know, honing in on who that is, you know, my ICA for my one-on-one work is different than my ICA for my other programs. And so I have to kind of change my, you know, my approach. But
Right.
if once you know that person, once you really understand their challenges, that person may be a lot like you and where
Mhm.
you were a couple of years ago, or maybe where you are, you know, you were last year. It becomes so much easier to market to them because it feels
Mhm.
like more of a conversation, more of a relationship. And that's what I want to create with my email list. But also, I want to help people create that kind of relationship with their email lists as they grow and they nurture
Right.
and they mature those lists.
So question for you. How do you like infuse creativity into your copy and then still deliver that like clear, persuasive message that your client needs you? Like, listen, we are launching this program, we're selling this program, we are doing X, Y, and Z. How do you like infuse the two together?
A lot of it depends on the nature of the client and the program, which is one of the reasons I really like working with, you know, coaches and course creators who are willing to be the face of the business, right? For example, one of my clients is a travel industry expert professional, and she's been in the industry 30 years. She's trained thousands of students, and she loves Disney.
Mm,
And so a lot of her emails, because we're Disney fans too. We live 6 hours. We can go on the weekend, you know,
sure.
and it's so much fun to drop little Disney kind of hints or references that may pass some people by, but the people who are Disney fans, they're like,
They
I
know.
get that. And it just creates like a little bit more common ground, a little bit stronger of a bond that makes you feel closer to this, you know, person out there on the internet that you may never have met before. So a lot
Right.
of it really depends on the client and sort of who the client is and what their personality is. I have had clients that are more, well, I won't say they are less like that. They are more, I want to say corporate, not like it's a bad thing, but it's just they don't tend to have sort of that attractive character, that person that I'm writing emails from. And it makes it a little bit more difficult to write those emails. It's not as much fun. So a lot of times it's really understanding the brand voice and the personality of the person from whose perspective you're writing. And
Mhm.
then you can drop in little hints and little stories and stuff like that, because the more you write for them, the more you get to know them and the more you consume their
Right.
content, it becomes sort of second nature. So a lot of it is just time, you know, kind of being able to sort of build up that voice. Actually, this client that I was talking about actually said on a team call one day, she said that my husband Bennett and I write in her voice better than she does. And that's always tickled me because,
Well,
you
that's the
know,
highest compliment, I think.
right.
Yeah.
And it just made me happy because
Yeah.
that's my goal. Like
Right.
I want, and she's very open about the fact that we write all of her emails. So it's not like she's, you know,
It's a
pretending
big
or
secret.
anything.
Yeah.
Right. But, you know, it makes me feel good that people don't go, huh, that email doesn't match what I see in Cindy's videos. Like that, there's a
Right.
disconnect there, right? Because from a
Right.
brand perspective, you want that consistency. It's really important. And so I want people to feel like the person that they're watching on YouTube is the same person they're receiving these emails from.
Absolutely. I mean, there's got to be that commonality that goes between all the platforms that this person is pushing out their marketing, and email being one of them too. And that's where I think people can get inconsistent. If they don't know how to do it themselves and they try. And it's just, we're just not all the same. We all can't do things greatly. So we may be great on video, we may be terrible when it comes to email marketing. So being able to like tap into somebody like you and your company and have that as a resource is fantastic. And they get, we all talk about these big agencies out there, but one of the things that I will always say to people is that you can get lost in a big agency. You can get passed around to somebody who's just punching a time clock, and they don't care as much as like the small business owners, like, which is really, kind of what we consider ourselves, if you want. So gonna pivot. I want to talk about email subject lines, because we know they can make or break an email open rate. So what strategies do you employ to craft attention grabbing subject lines that obviously entice readers to click?
There are a number of different approaches that you can take with subject lines. One of the things that I won't say I always do this, but most of the time I focus on subject lines that evoke curiosity. And actually, there's this concept that I learned from Rob and Kennedy, who are email marketing professionals who have a fantastic membership that I love, called Email Marketing Heroes. And they talk about what they call compound curiosity. And it's so neat. And I don't want to try to explain it because I want to explain it as well as they do. They have a podcast on which they explain it. And I'll see if I can track down that link. But curiosity, we are naturally curious people. Like our species is naturally curious.
Human, yeah, right.
Yeah. And the more curious or curiosity invoking you can make your subject lines, the more people are going to want to know what's in them, right? So instead of telling somebody this email is about affiliate marketing,
50% off in this email. It's like,
right, exactly.
You just made my choice. If I didn't need to buy, I'm not opening it.
Right, exactly. And so it's not revealing the whole story in your subject line, right? So, and there are a lot of different ways that you can do this. Compound curiosity, actually, it leaves sort of two aspects of two bits of curiosity. So like something, and I'm coming up with this off the top of my head, may not work as well. I should have thought of one ahead of time, but something like, when she said this, or you won't believe what I did when I heard this, right? So you get 2 points of curiosity. You get the what you did and what did she say?
What did you do and what did she say?
What did you do and then what did she say? Or or something like, this is the one thing you're not doing in your email marketing that made my client 6 figures or whatever. And it's like, well, what is that one thing and how did you make that? Like, how did that client make 6 figures out of an email? So really giving them more than one thing to be curious about, and that just compels them to open even more. But there are a lot of things that you can do. Really, a lot of email marketing is just standing out in the inbox. If you look at your Gmail or your Outlook or whatever, everything is black and white all the way down, right? Now, if you're fancy and you have color coding and all of that, well, we're not talking about you, but most of us just have, black and white email box, right? But simple things like using an emoji in the subject line will make it stand out, right?
Sure.
So that's why I like using, and now don't overuse emojis, but and make sure that the emoji is applicable to whatever it is you're
Right.
talking about. So like, don't put like a shh emoji, when you're not revealing a secret like that.
Right.
That feels a little bit like a bait and switch, but which we absolutely want to avoid with subject lines.
Right.
But anything like even just that little burst of color in your inbox can make people notice. And that's the first thing. Subject lines need to catch their attention, kind of like in social media when we talk about,
Sure.
graphics, right? And images. Like, how do you stop the scroll? Well,
Mhm.
whatever the equivalent of that is in email marketing is what we want to do. One of the
Right.
other things, though, that I really like doing is personalizing my email subject lines. Now, not every email platform will let you do this, but the majority of them will. And essentially what you're doing is you're taking the person's first name and you're dynamically inserting it, or your platform is dynamically inserting it into the subject line.
Right.
I always associate this quote with Shakespeare. I don't know if that's actually true, but they say, the sweetest sound in the world is the sound of your own name, right? And if you ever notice, a lot of times you don't actually hear people use your name very often.
Right.
If they're talking to you, I'm not going to go, if we're sitting here talking, hey, Megan, do you know? I mean, it's just the two of us. If I'm talking, I'm
Right.
talking to you.
Right.
And
Right.
so, but even using their name in the subject line, I've tested it with different clients, and
Mhm.
there's a pretty significant difference. I've seen studies that have said that it improves open rates by up to 50%, which pretty sweet.
Right.
But so that's one of those things that I really like to do. So like evoking curiosity, asking questions, because again, we naturally want to answer a question if somebody asks it of us, right?
Sure.
And
Yep.
so, if you can craft your subject line in a way that makes them want to answer, or if you kind of leave them hanging, right? And close that loop in your email, you're going to, once you've hooked them and you follow through. The nice thing is, once you get their attention,
Mhm.
they're going to start looking for your emails.
Yep.
And like, there's not a ton of them, but there are people on whose email lists I am a subscriber, and pretty much every time they email me, I read it, or at least, scan it and glance through, see what they're saying.
We do. We scan our vast Gmail, if that's what you're using, and
Yep.
we look for that. I know which tabs I have, who goes to what tab, and I know which ones I go and I delete or unsubscribe, and then I know which I'm like, oh, I haven't heard from her lately.
Uh-huh.
Let's see where her email is, and I'll even type their name in the
Yep.
subject to bring it up to the top,
Exactly.
because I don't want to waste my time. I want to hear what Lynley had to say today, and I put LYN and boom,
Mm-hmm.
and I read your email. So it is, as you grow that relationship, it definitely, to the point that even if a day or two and you're like, gosh, I haven't heard from her in a while. And
Yep.
it's like, it's your friend. And I mean, yes, we are friends. So it's, beside the point, but
Right.
you do get that way with some emails like Costco. I'm like, oh, I haven't checked Costco lately. Let me check and see what they've got for me.
What's my buddy Costco up to this
Right.
week?
Right. We talked a little bit about, increasing the open rates, and that brings me to kind of my next question, which, one of the things about all the advertising we do, whether it's email marketing or social media, people want to know, like, I'm paying all this money, what's the return on my investment? And when digital marketing first started about, well, I mean, I think there's two schools of thoughts. There's the agency side, and then there's the entrepreneur side.
Mm-hmm.
And the agency side always could afford the best in analytics, the programs and everything like that. So it was very easy for them to tell people what the return on their six-figure investment would be, seven-figure investment. And when you're dealing with, a smaller business, like, I know I'm embarrassed to say that, 6 years ago, people would say, how do I tell the return on my investment? And I'd be like, it's organic social media. You can't. Like, I can't give you a concrete number organically. Now I can. I know which things to measure. Obviously, the platforms all report out certain metrics that I can use. So with email marketing, what, like, key performance indicators, which we call KPIs across the board, do you track and measure for the success of your clients' campaigns? And then how do you use this data to refine your strategies?
Ooh, oh, good question.
Thank you.
There are a couple of KPIs that I paid most attention to. Open rate is sticky because since the iOS 15 update, which came out, it's been
2 years?
almost 2 years.
3?
Yeah, next
Yeah,
month,
yeah.
2 years. Open rates became not, they're not unimportant, but they are not like the epitome of,
It's like likes used to be, likes
right,
and follows used to be the
it,
end all
right,
be all. And
that's
now
right,
it's like, I don't care how many followers you have.
right.
What's your engagement rate?
Exactly, exactly. And it's an open rate has really become that kind of thing where I watch open rate not to see how many people are opening my emails, because I can't really trust that data, because it's Apple's fault, basically. And as an Apple user, I accept that. But basically what happens is, if you use an Apple Mail product, their default products on mobile or on a desktop, their regular mail app, it can report you as having opened an email when you actually haven't opened the email, right? And this is all in the name of privacy, right? So what happened about 2 years ago when the iOS update went in, all of a sudden people were like, oh my gosh, my open rates just skyrocketed. I have a 45% open rate on my emails. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but you really don't. Yeah, it's probably, 20%. Because we just can't rely on that data anymore. But it can show us trends, right? So if your open rate is 45% and then for some reason it drops to 25%, there's a problem somewhere, likely in deliverability, but something has changed. So I keep an eye on open rate more for the pattern than I do anything else. The next really important KPI that we track is click-through rate. So obviously your click-through rate is indicating how engaged your users are. Now, let me go back and say about open rate. Open rate really doesn't tell you anything about the content of your email. What open rate tells you is the power of your subject line and your name in the inbox, like we were talking about, right?
Right.
I might look and see Amy Porterfield sent me an email. I don't care what the subject line is. I'm going to read it because I get a lot of value out of her emails, right?
Right.
So that's really all open rate is telling you, how good your subject line is. Click-through rate actually gives you a much better idea of how engaged people are with your content. But here's the trick. You can only measure click-through rate if you give people something to click on. So if you don't have a very clear call to action, you can't really track how engaged people are. And a lot of times people are like, I just want to give value. Well, that's fantastic. Absolutely give value. But give value in a way that you can track the effectiveness of your email program, right? Unfortunately, click-through rate is getting a little sticky too, particularly with folks who are using like corporate email systems, right? Like these big businesses, like, when I worked at Corp, I'm sure QVC does that, but what happens is when those emails come in, they're not delivered immediately, and they have software enabled that will go through and click the links to make sure that they're not links to spam or, phishing stuff, sketchy stuff, right? Well, the problem is that reports back to your email platform as a click.
Right.
But it's not a click, right? I mean, it's not the person clicking. And so even click-through rate has now become a little bit less reliable. And one of the things I've noticed is, really the thing that that made this very obvious to me was, you know how in a lot of emails, a lot of templates, you'll put like your social icons at the bottom, right? And let's say that I have 4 links in my emails, and 1 is my main call to action and 3 are social links.
Right.
If my click-through rate is very, very close to the same for all of those different links, that gives me pause, because it's highly unlikely that 200 people exactly clicked on exactly the same links, right? It's just, I mean, statistically probably not true, right? But so we take that with a grain of salt now too, unfortunately. But I've noticed this particularly in ConvertKit, just because this is where one of my clients, where we've noticed this trend. And they will report out those clicks, but then when they do the calculation to show the KPI on your dashboard, they don't include those extra clicks. And so they're looking at, I don't know what I've actually asked, and I've not gotten an answer about what they're like, how they calculate that.
Right.
But it is definitely something to pay attention to. And the other thing that, and really this is not something that most of your platforms will report out to you in this way, but it's called the click to open, right? So, when you talk about open rate, it's the number of people who opened divided by the number of people who were sent the email, right? And then you multiply by 100 to get your percentage, right? Click-through rate, number of people who clicked over the number of people who were sent the email. But if they didn't open the email, they didn't click the email. So in order to really gauge your engagement rate, click to open rate takes the number of people who clicked over the number of people who opened. And it just gives you a little bit better of an idea of really how engaged people are. The people who opened, did they click, right? If that's very low, that does tell you something about the content of your email. Maybe something's not clear. Maybe your emails are too long. And the way that we figure this out is split testing. So that's really where we get to dig into what's really going on. The other 2 stats that I track almost always are unsubscribes and bounces. Depending on the platform you use, what the definition of a bounce could differ. But unsubscribes are people who unsubscribe from each email, right? Bounces are when you have email addresses that for some reason rejected the email that you tried to send. It can happen for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's because the account no longer exists, so of course it can't be delivered. Sometimes it's a network interruption, or you're over their email quota. So some of these things you can affect, some of them you can't. Sometimes it's simple things like typos in email addresses. The number of times I have seen gmail.com.
Yes.
Yeah, if I had a nickel, right? So some of those things are, they don't necessarily show you the whole picture, but they're a part of the whole picture. And that's really the thing that I try to impress upon my clients is, one email doesn't tell the whole story. You really need to be looking at a number of emails to really see those trends and those patterns, right? And if you can go back and say, all right, my click-through rate was really good on the emails where my call to action was a button, let's just say, and where my call to action was maybe a text-based link that was like, integrated into the text.
Right.
Okay. Well, if my stats aren't as good on that kind of email, that gives me a lot of information about the way that people are interacting with my emails. So really, those are the main KPIs. Now, a lot of people will also track, and a lot of this depends on, platforms that you're using, but they'll track conversion rate and stuff like that. But that takes a little bit more math. And a lot of this stuff, these basic KPIs, you can get directly from your email platform without having to go digging, which is nice.
Most of them have like a dashboard of some sort.
Yeah. Exactly. I actually have a spreadsheet that I have as a freebie where you can just plug in the raw numbers and it'll do the calculations for you. And it's like color coded. So you can set your goals, and say, well, my click-through rate goal is 25%. And it helps just visually see like how, are you reaching that? If so, what kinds of emails are you reaching that on and stuff? So,
yeah. Right. Where do you think, obviously you don't have a crystal ball, but in the next like 2 to 5 years, what do you think about the future of email marketing? And with all the privacy laws happening in Europe and our friends up North Canada, and so many things, so many like walls getting put up, and it's so hard to do business with advertising and using emails. Like, where do you see with the privacy laws as they are now, and kind of the buzz about where they're going? Like, in 2 to 5 years, how is it going to affect email marketing?
It absolutely affects email for sure. Now, with GDPR in the European Union and CASL in I'm pointing up, Canada.
Canada.
Those two laws are actually more restrictive than the US CAN-SPAM laws. And those two laws actually require that you as the business owner collect consent from the user before you can ever email them, right?
Right.
So one of the ways that, and I tend to err on the side of, I would rather follow the more restrictive law and just going down the road, as opposed to, okay, well, where are the people? Because it applies to the people that are receiving your email. Well, if you're a local business, you can be kind of confident that the people who are receiving your emails are probably not too far outside of your local area.
In a certain radius.
Right. Sure. We're global. We can't assume that anymore.
Yeah.
So I really encourage people, go ahead and follow the more restrictive law, because it'll just save you time and effort in the end. Because
I feel like that way too. I mean,
yeah,
I'd rather follow something more restrictive and have them opt in than constantly. Although I'm very new to my own email marketing, so it's interesting to watch. Like, you just subscribed 2 months ago. Why are you unsubscribing? But then again, I have other thoughts about that too. They're not really here to hear what I have to say. So
right.
That's good that they're unsubscribing.
Exactly. And unsubscribe, like a lot of people freak out when people unsubscribe. Bless and release, because here are the things. When somebody unsubscribes, they are not interested in hearing from you. And they're also, but if you keep them on your list, you are literally, for most platforms, you are paying for that person to be on your list. They are taking up a spot but they are never going to spend money with you. So get them off, and let's get people on your list that actually want to be there. But here's the thing about the privacy laws that a lot of people don't understand. CAN-SPAM is the one that applies to anybody, any US citizen. So as a US based business, I need to follow these laws, but also I need to follow them because the folks that I send emails to could be, in many of them are in the US. But what we're seeing over the last year or so is more and more states enacting their own more restrictive privacy laws. So Montana has one, California has one. There was one that passed, I think, last week. I can't remember which state it was, but they are looking at the CAN-SPAM laws and realizing that, they're protecting consumers, but only to a point, right? So they are following in the steps of CASL and GDPR. Right. And I do not want to get into the habit of trying to figure out where somebody is located in order to know how to communicate with them. So,
well, then my question is, like, I moved back home from California. If my phone was from California and has a California number, and I work on there, or is it from the IP address?
It's usually it's from the IP address. Mine always thinks I'm in Illinois, though. Like, I'm in Georgia, but for some reason, they always think I'm in Napierville, Illinois. I mean, it's so random. But so in that case, as we see these laws becoming more restrictive, it just means we have to pay more attention and make sure that not only are we following those laws, but we have to step up our game, because we want people to, respond and click and communicate through their clicks and their responses and their opens and all of that they want to receive our emails. And so there are a number of things you can put in place to do that. There are some things that, if, for example, if you do not have an unsubscribe link in your marketing email, you could see heavy fines if somebody reported you. If you continue to email somebody who has unsubscribed from your list, you could really get in hot water. In the US, those fines are not as bad.
Right.
They're like $43,000 something, but it's per recipient. So if you have 500 people on your list and the FTC comes knocking at your door saying, what are you emailing? That's still going to be a chunk, right? In Canada and the UK, it's upwards of $1 million per violation. I can't afford that, so I'm just going to follow the law.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, but it's a really good question to think, what is email marketing going to look like in the next 5 years? Email has actually, the first email was actually sent the year I was born. So email is in its prime.
There you
That's
go.
what we're going to say.
Go.
But email has more longevity and really just history than so many of these social media platforms, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, all of this is always evolving. And so it's hard to, whether you have a crystal ball or not, really think about, what am I going to be doing in 5 years? The important thing is you keep an eye on what's going on. And this goes for social media and any kind of marketing. Like, you have to stay on top of what's going on, because everything changes all the time. Just how frequently all these platforms change the way they do things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so you have to pay attention. And that's why it's so important to get plugged into communities who are doing very similar things that you're doing, from a marketing perspective or from a business perspective, and that share this kind of information with each other, because our biggest assets our biggest asset is our network. And so those people, whether they're in-person groups or virtual groups, that is just going to make your marketing more effective, because you're going to be making sure that you're talking with the right people who want to communicate with you, right? But it also outlines how important it is to not rely on a single channel for all of your communication. I don't just do email marketing, right? Yeah. Because I know that the people who are out there looking at my social media stuff may be completely different than the people on my email list. So don't assume, first of all, that I can just use email. Email is not really a traffic driver. It's not a brand awareness. It's not a top of funnel marketing strategy. It's a middle of funnel marketing strategy. So if you're not using these top of funnel strategies like social media, like advertising, like all of this stuff, you can't get people on your email list. So it's not going to do you any good. So you really have to look at a balanced strategy that, honestly, that you're managing well. That said, one of the things that we talked about actually in my membership this week was taking the content that you say share on social media and sharing it to your email list as well. We assume that everybody, when I post something on social media, everybody who follows me is going to see this.
Right.
No, they're not.
No.
Same thing. Everybody who gets my emails would, are on social too. You may be talking about completely different groups of people. So you can not only save yourself time and effort and energy in repurposing, but you can get your message out to more people as when you are marketing in multiple channels.
Right. Wow. There's a lot to glean from this conversation. There's so many things I just learned about. So thank you. But I think, email marketing is such an important part of the whole marketing ecosystem. If not, in this, even though one of the things I do is social media marketing, I definitely respect how important email marketing is, because I know the volatility of these platforms.
Yep.
Even if they go down and they don't answer to anybody,
Yeah.
they do not. It's one of the most baffling things that these billion-dollar corporations, they can shut down on a dime for
Exactly.
whatever reason, and they don't answer to anybody. They're like, yeah, we'll be back when we're back. And you sit there I sit there like holding my clients' hands going, and
Exactly.
we have email to back us up, so we can email our clients should anything. And usually not all the platforms go down at one time, so you learn to
Right.
pivot, use other ones, but
Well,
it's
and part of it
crazy
is,
when you think about it.
it is, and part of it, it's not even just the entire platform going down, but think about how many people we know whose accounts have been banned, or
Yeah,
their pages and their
just
and
shut down.
their ad accounts and stuff. Like, we have a friend who had 20,000 followers on TikTok, and her account was gone like that
For no
reason. For no reason.
Glitch
Yeah.
that shut her down. And it's just still, there's no answer because there's nobody to get in touch with, and that constantly surprises my clients all the time. They're like, can't you call somebody at Facebook? And I'm like, no.
Oh,
No.
But
No.
I have noticed that the majority of the email marketing platforms that I've worked with, their support,
Yes.
excellent.
Yes.
And that is such a difference in between, that and social media. That, and we marketers talk all the time about, building your business on land you own, not land you borrow. And borrowing social media land leaves you vulnerable. And that's not to say don't do it, but you can dip your toes in all those lands, but build your business on land you own. One of the things I say a lot is, back in 2014, when Facebook bought Instagram, they didn't buy Instagram for the technology. Facebook already had that technology. They bought Instagram for its customer base, for its users.
Right.
And the value in your business is your email list, your customer list. And whether or not you intend to sell your business one day doesn't matter. But the stronger those relationships are with the people on your email list, they're much more likely to buy from you, to refer people to you, to share your content. They become like ambassadors for your brand because you have developed that relationship, and they trust you.
Yeah.
And that's powerful. If you recommend somebody to me or a brand to me, I'm much more likely to go out and engage with that brand than if I see a commercial on television.
Absolutely. Yep.
And that's really where that relationship marketing really comes in, basing everything in the relationship that you're creating every time you send an email. And when you post on social media and all of that stuff too. But email actually has one of the highest ROIs of any marketing channel. I have seen stats anywhere from, for every $1 you spend on your email marketing, you would get a return of $38 to $44. That kind of ROI doesn't happen anywhere
on any other organic.
legally.
No.
Outside of pyramid schemes, right? This is, you're not going to find investments that get you that kind of ROI. It just doesn't happen. And so, but that's to say, if you are not nurturing your email list, if you're not giving them opportunities to buy from you, if you're not sharing your products and services or affiliate links or whatever, they're not doing you any good. You're not making any money off of that. So
you're also, like, in essence, like we talk about, you're not nurturing a relationship. If I call you once a year just because I'm driving to Florida and I'm on my way to Georgia, like, I'm going to stop by, at some point you're not going to pick up the phone that year that I call.
Yeah, it's true.
And you're going to be like, eh.
Exactly. And that's really where I think one of the reasons that I like working with, with coaches and course creators and not so much corporate brands is that relationship feels a lot stronger, and you can get a little bit more vulnerable with people from that perspective.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying air all your dirty laundry. No, but
some people do.
Yeah, some people do. And if that's their call, right? But
yeah,
for example, one of my clients, we have way more history than I ever realized. We were introduced by a mutual friend in the digital marketing industry. Come to find out that he is from the town I live in, and he grew up with my husband and his brother. So I know stories about this client from when he was a child,
right.
and it's so much fun. And also just other references that that just go with his personality and his background,
Yeah.
And one email that we actually have, I think, in his nurture sequence, talks about how he learned the first time he picked up a book he's a fine artist, and he weaves baskets. They're gorgeous. And it's his origin story, right? And it's all about how, he and his now wife, then girlfriend, would go out into the woods and pull kudzu vines down off of the trees so he could dry them and then prepare them to use in his baskets. Like even just that picture of him doing that, it makes you feel a little bit more connected to it, just thinking of that. And so that's really where I think when we talk about building relationships, it's much harder. And we all have people in our lives that our relationships are kind of, I don't mean this in a bad way, but kind of shallow, right? And you say, hey, how's it going? But if something happens, something happens in your life, they're probably not going to be the first people to call you, But we want to develop a little bit deeper relationship. And the way that we do that is by sharing about ourselves, even sharing about, I post a lot about my dogs because they're really cute, and the internet loves dogs, I gotta say. But anybody else who has a dog all of a sudden has something in common with me.
They resonate with
you. Yep. And that's really where the power of that is. And you can absolutely do that in social media too. I'm not saying that email is
we do it all the time. I mean, listen, that's the social and social media, right?
It is the social, right? And email marketing is very similar in that, excuse me, but it is a much more, we can't control who sees what on their social media feeds, and we know that, Facebook page reach has historically been on the downhill slide.
The serious decline. Yes.
Serious decline. And, Instagram, I get so many suggested for you things in Instagram now. I can barely find content from people I actually know, And so focusing on but with email marketing, we know with pretty good reliability that at least the people on our list received our email. Whereas with social, we don't know that. I mean, we can assume based on like views and likes, but we don't know who those people are. And so it really becomes a very powerful way to market. The other thing about email that people, I think they either they don't think about or they discount the power of this, is the ability to personalize the information that you're sending. So let's say that I have a lead magnet that is all about client testimonials, right? And how to get and ask for client testimonials. Well, if I know that you're interested in learning more about client testimonials and I have another resource, I can send that resource just to the people who have opted into that one lead magnet. And the fact that I know that you got this lead magnet and then I'm sharing additional content with you is really powerful. So we're not just, spraying and praying our content out there and hope that the right people see it. We can actually personalize that content based on their shopping behaviors, based on their opens and their clicks and all of that. And that helps build that relationship even more. So that really becomes, it becomes one more layer of relationship that we're building that will, if you offer them the opportunity, will lead to sales.
Yes. Well, I think that is a great way to close this interview. Relationship building.
That's what it's about.
That's what it's
Yeah.
about. So we definitely can agree on that.
Yeah.
Lynley, where I will of course put all your information in the show notes, but where can people find you? If they're listening, they're like, I gotta find her now.
I'm really easy to find. I'm the only Lynley Hips. So as long as you spell my name right, you can find me. That's my website. That's my TikTok. That's my Instagram. But yeah, my website is lynleyhips.com, and I've got a bunch of, I just redid it and I'm so proud of it. So it's got a lot of free resources, a lot of good content. YouTube, I post YouTube videos pretty frequently with email related content. So, and you can always, drop me an email, hello@lynleyhips.com, if you have questions or you want to know more about working with me or whatever. But yeah, I'm pretty easy to find.
And if you need help starting to be accountable to write emails,
Yeah.
I know I just joined your community. But it's a paid group where we are committed to writing our audience every week.
Yep.
And it's kind of accountability, but you're giving us some tips and tricks along the way for those of us like me who are now starting to nurture my own email list. So
Exactly.
What is the name of that? I know there was some, and it's not that I don't know, I do know, but
you do
I
know
we're talking about like maybe updating the name of it.
You know how there are people out there who name their babies and then they decide that the name doesn't fit and they have to go change their baby's name? That's kind of how I feel about this membership.
I've never met one of those people, but maybe I just have.
Didn't one of the Kardashians do that?
Oh, I don't know. I should know that.
You should know that. But yeah, it's one of those things that I named this community and then I decided that the name just didn't fit. So right now it is still called eLab, but I'm looking at changing the name. It'll still be something lab likely. But the link will work no matter what. So we'll drop the link in the description below so you can get to it. We're currently debating between List Legends and List Launchpad. So, we'll see.
And it's for anybody who wants to, email your list and you just need a little bit of help, a little bit of accountability. And I mean, you're going to get a lot of help because your knowledge is just incredible in this space. So yeah,
it's been a lot of fun so far. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's just as much for me as it is for anybody else, because we're wearing all the hats and sometimes there's just not enough time in the week. But what this membership is giving us is a dedicated block of time, just an hour, to sit down every week and co-work together and get these things done. Today's Friday, so at our Wednesday co-working session, one of our members got 2 emails and almost a 3rd email written in just an hour. Right. And she was like, I feel such a relief because I feel like I've got some padding now. I've got some leeway so that if next week if something happened, I don't have to scramble around.
Yeah.
Or I don't have to just skip emailing my list next week,
Yeah.
So it really does. I do well with that kind of, accountability and showing up and getting it done. And
most people do.
I think so
most
too.
People, or I should say most people find the most success.
Yes.
With accountability and a community. So
yeah. Plus we're awesome. Hello.
A lot of fun. But thank you again for your time today. And again, all of your knowledge on the subject we covered, which is fantastic. So,
well, thanks for the opportunity.
Sure.
See you soon.